What if I told you that one of the greatest military leaders in history was already showing signs of greatness as a child? A boy who would grow into a legend, a boy who would be called Alexander the Great. His story begins long before he sets foot on the battlefield, before he conquered Persia, before he ruled over one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. This is the story of Alexander's early years, the years that shaped him into the legend we know today. Alexander was born in 356 BC in a place called Pella, the capital of Macedonia in Greece. His father was King Philip II, a powerful and ambitious ruler. His mother was Olympias, a strong and mysterious woman who believed Alexander was no ordinary child. The night he was born, strange and powerful signs appeared in the sky. It is said that a total solar eclipse darkened the heavens, a rare and dramatic event. At the same time, the great Temple of Artemis in Ephesus burned down. Many took these signs as omens that a great man had entered the world. Some believed it meant that Alexander was destined to rule over all. From the moment he was born, Alexander was told he was special. His mother told him that he was descended from gods. His ancestors were said to be Achilles and Hercules. Some even believed that Zeus himself was his real father. Imagine growing up with that thought in your mind. Wouldn't you feel destined for something great? Olympias played a significant role in shaping Alexander's beliefs. She was known for her intense devotion to religious rituals and mysticism. She often reinforced the idea that Alexander was divinely chosen, making him believe he was destined to achieve extraordinary things. Meanwhile, King Philip had his own vision for his son. He wanted Alexander to be more than just a prince. He wanted him to be a warrior and a leader. From an early age, Alexander was surrounded by soldiers, learning the art of war firsthand. He watched his father lead his armies to victory and expand the Macedonian kingdom. He was fascinated by military strategy, listening carefully to Philip's discussions with his generals. Even as a child, Alexander showed signs of brilliance. He was curious, sharp, and incredibly ambitious. Stories say that he once asked visiting ambassadors about the lands beyond Persia instead of simple matters of his own kingdom. This was unusual for a child. He was already thinking about the bigger world and how he could conquer it. By the time he was a teenager, it was clear that Alexander wasn't like other boys. He wasn't just a prince. He was being shaped into something far greater. The lessons from his parents, the stories of heroes, and the military training he received all played a part in preparing him for the future. Alexander wasn't raised like an ordinary child. His father, King Philip, was a brilliant military leader, and he made sure his son was raised to be strong and fearless. From a young age, Alexander trained in combat, riding horses, and hunting wild animals. He was always surrounded by warriors and learned how to fight like one. Philip personally supervised much of Alexander's training, ensuring that he grew into a tough and disciplined warrior. He was taught how to wield a sword, fight in formation, and command troops in battle. He didn't just practice with wooden weapons like other boys. He trained with real ones, proving that he was ready to fight alongside grown men. But Philip knew that strength alone wasn't enough. A great ruler needed to be smart too. So he hired the best teacher he could find, Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers in history. Before sending Alexander to Aristotle, Philip told him, "I am grateful not just that you will teach my son, but that you will teach him how to rule." He understood that knowledge and wisdom were just as important as military power. Imagine being taught by one of the smartest men in the world. For 3 years, Aristotle taught Alexander everything: philosophy, science, politics, and even medicine. But what Alexander loved the most were the stories of heroes, especially Achilles from the Iliad. Achilles was strong, brave, and unstoppable. Alexander admired him so much that he carried a copy of the Iliad wherever he went. He didn't just want to read about heroes, he wanted to become one. Aristotle's teachings were more than just lessons from books. He took Alexander and his companions on journeys, teaching them about the natural world, different cultures, and how to govern people wisely. He emphasized the importance of logic, ethics, and rhetoric, skills that Alexander would later use in diplomacy and leadership. One of the most important ideas Aristotle taught Alexander was about ruling people. Aristotle believed that Greeks were superior to non-Greeks, but Alexander would later challenge this belief. He would go on to treat conquered peoples with respect, integrating them into his empire rather than simply oppressing them. There's even a story that Aristotle gave Alexander a special annotated version of the Iliad, which Alexander kept with him at all times. He slept with it under his pillow, next to his dagger. This shows how deeply he connected with the idea of being a warrior hero like Achilles. Aristotle's influence didn't just make Alexander a scholar, it made him a visionary leader. He learned to think beyond war and conquest, understanding the power of culture, politics, and human nature. These lessons would serve him well in the years to come. Alexander's education under Aristotle didn't just focus on philosophy and science. He also learned public speaking, politics, and ethics. Aristotle encouraged Alexander to question everything, to think critically, and to understand different cultures. This would later help him as he ruled over a vast empire. Even during his training, Alexander stood out. He was competitive, always striving to be the best in everything. Whether it was racing on horseback, wrestling, or solving complex philosophical problems, he wanted to win. He was never satisfied with being second best. By the time Alexander was a teenager, he wasn't just a prince. He was already becoming a warrior, a leader, and a thinker. And soon, he would get his first real test on the battlefield. Aristotle's influence didn't just make Alexander a scholar, it made him a visionary leader. He learned to think beyond war and conquest, understanding the power of culture, politics, and human nature. These lessons would serve him well in the years to come. One of the most famous stories from Alexander's childhood is about a horse. But not just any horse, Bucephalus, a wild and untamable beast. No one could ride him. The horse would throw off every rider who tried. Even King Philip's best men failed. But Alexander, only a boy, noticed something. The horse wasn't wild, it was scared. The sun was casting shadows in front of it, making it nervous. So Alexander did something no one else had thought of. He turned the horse towards the sun so it couldn't see the shadows, and then he climbed onto its back. And just like that, the wild horse was tamed. King Philip was so amazed that he told Alexander, "My son, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedonia is too small for you." From that moment on, Bucephalus became Alexander's trusted companion. He rode him in every battle, and together they conquered vast lands. This moment was not just about taming a horse. It symbolized Alexander's ability to overcome challenges and control his destiny. But not everything was perfect. Alexander and his father didn't always get along. Philip had married another woman, and Alexander worried that this new marriage could threaten his right to the throne. This led to arguments, and at one point, Alexander and his mother even left Macedonia for a short time. Despite their differences, Philip still recognized Alexander's potential. He let his son lead part of his army in battle at just 16 years old. And Alexander did not disappoint. He crushed a rebellion and even built his own city, naming it after himself, Alexandropolis. Then, something happened that changed everything. King Philip was assassinated, killed at a celebration. The kingdom was thrown into chaos. But instead of panicking, Alexander took control. At just 20 years old, he became the new king of Macedonia. But his rule was not secure. Many of Macedonia's enemies saw this as an opportunity to rise against the young and inexperienced king. Some nobles doubted Alexander's ability to rule, and rival factions began forming in secret. Alexander acted swiftly. He eliminated those who opposed him, consolidating his power. He then turned his attention to the rebellious Greek city-states, particularly Thebes, which tried to break free from Macedonian control. With remarkable speed, Alexander crushed the rebellion and destroyed Thebes as a warning to others. His brutal response sent a clear message. He was not just Philip's son, he was a force to be reckoned with. With Greece secured, Alexander now had his eyes set on something much greater, the Persian Empire. And this was just the beginning. These early years shaped Alexander into the leader he would become. A warrior, a strategist, a man who believed he was destined for greatness. He had trained for this moment his entire life. Now, he was ready to change the world. But what came next? The battles, the conquests, the rise of an empire. That's a story for another time.